to Sex, Love, and the Self. This week we are talking to Coach Ellyn again.
Hey everybody, I'm back.
And this time we are going to try to stay on topic and talk about burnout and dating.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I want to kind of, I think the perhaps the right way to start here would be to just sort of clarify for people what we mean by that, and specifically what you mean, like in your experience and
Yeah.
context.
This, like, when we originally connected about doing this podcast together, that was the idea that I wanted to talk about because, and really where this comes from for me is I feel like, especially if you're at like a certain age, there's so much pressure to almost like make your entire life revolve around dating. Like, I remember when I was getting back into dating, I had one friend who literally framed it to me, and like, this is not like any shade toward her, and it's not any shade toward people who approach dating like this. Excuse me. She said something along the lines of, think of it like you're just collecting meals. Like, how many
Whoa.
meals can I get? And that, I see where she was coming from because she was trying to get me back out there, but A, that felt like super like inauthentic for me. And B, how she wanted me to go about it, as soon as I heard it, I was just like, that sounds draining. That
Yeah.
sounds draining AF. I do not think I can date like that. And I know there's some people that can't. There's a podcaster I follow who literally, I think she went on like 65 some dates in probably the span of a few months. And that's like her shtick and like all the things that she learned about dating during that period of time. And again, I hear that and I'm like, good for you. Props to you that you can do that. That sounds draining for me. One of my biggest hangups with getting back into dating is it sounds exhausting.
Yeah.
And that's really what
So
I'm talking about when I'm talking about burnout and dating is, how do we date in a way that is sustainable? Like, how do we date in a way that we're not pouring so much of our energy and our effort into dating in a way that it's going to burn us out? That's really where
yeah.
I'm come from.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so like ages ago, before when dating apps were first starting to be a thing,
Yeah.
I wrote an article about it because at the time it felt like so taboo to so many people. Like, how would you, and one of the things that the woman that I was interviewing about it mentioned was, that she was sort of able to filter down to a more appropriate pool of potential partners or candidates or whatever. And I have heard that about, from CEOs of the dating apps, that's one of the values. However, in my personal experience, it doesn't really work that way. I
No.
didn't get like spiritually centered Zen men that wanted to, go within and explore their feelings. Like it didn't help me.
No, I agree. And I actually feel like dating apps are part of what is draining about dating for me. First of
Yeah.
all, I'm I'm an introvert by nature. Despite what people think, I feel like everybody's surprised when I tell them that I'm an introvert. I'm very outgoing. Like, don't get me wrong. I think that's still a misconception about introversion. I am not a shy human, but that's not what
Yeah.
introversion is. Introversion is that social situations, especially when I'm having to wrangle a lot of different conversations and there's a lot of people at once, they drain me. Being around people drains me. I love being around people, but I need a good recharge time. Like, literally, we were just talking about, I spent 5 days with my family. My mom's family is loud and boisterous, and we are very social and we drink a lot, and it is socially very taxing. I have nothing
Yeah.
planned this weekend and I am thrilled about it. Like, I don't want to people. So like, that's part of the difficulty that I have on dating apps is the surface conversations are actually
Yeah.
really draining for me. The
Yeah.
needing to be like on my game and be witty and whatnot. And let's be honest, and I'll admit right now, I apologize to any men who might be listening. I'm very, very biased about this. I hate having to carry the conversation. And I feel
Yeah.
like on dating apps, the majority of the time, I feel like I have to carry the conversation. Like, God forbid they ask me a question, I have to come up with all of the questions to keep the conversation going. And that in and of itself is draining as well. So it's like, not only are you fielding 80 bajillion different conversations when you're on dating apps, you're also trying to be witty, be on the ball, which is hard. And you're perhaps in certain situations, and I'm sure men feel the opposite at times too, you're having to carry the conversation, simultaneously gauging, is this person into it? Is this person worth it? Like, there's a lot of shit going on when we are on a dating app. And we're doing that with multiple people simultaneously. And that's exhausting.
Yeah,
And that's
of
part of
course.
the reason I feel like I don't like dating apps. Yeah, it feels forced. And that's part of the reason I don't like dating apps either. I would much rather meet somebody in, a more like real life scenario. But it's also just the
Yeah,
juggling act of having to do all of these things for all of these relationships simultaneously. It's exhausting. And I don't feel authentic, which also
yeah.
I feel like makes me burn out as well. It's just a whole thing.
It is a whole thing. And I'm glad that you touched on that, because that was one of the whole idea of the inauthenticity. Because that was one of
Mhm.
the things that have kind of come to mind for me too, is just like, I feel like no matter what, there's just this surface level interest across the board. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
if there's a visual connection, because there can't be more than that when you're swiping or
Yeah.
whatever it is, that baseline is not high enough for me. Like
No.
want I want there to be a little chemistry right off the bat. I want there to
Yeah.
be, and it feels like the engagement level is, commiserate with that
Mhm.
my ability to know anything about this person or feel anything about them, because it is digital, because it is virtual. There isn't that. And
Exactly.
I feel like you
And
almost need that.
simultaneously, it's like yeah, exactly. And I feel like you're simultaneously also trying to navigate the social aspect of like how soon is too soon to connect outside of the app. And
Yeah.
honestly, I'm realizing there's no freaking right answer for this because I've been in situations where I felt like it was dragging on and on and on, and I was being a very typical female in the sense that I was waiting for them to ask.
Yes.
And then I feel like it fizzled because nothing happened outside of the app. It was just like a weeks of like niceties on this app. And then
Yes.
simultaneously, I've had other situations where I've gotten on dating apps and I'm like, hey, I want to connect with you outside of the app, outside of at least messaging on the app
Yeah.
soon. And I feel like I've gotten pushback because it felt too soon. And I'm just like, I don't know how to operate in this. It's either taking too long and we stall out on the app, or I'm being too aggressive and they get intimidated. I feel like I just intimidate the shit out of guys anyways, but whatever. But like it's like I feel like there's no happy way to handle that. And this is I think the thing that gets me about dating is there's especially dating on apps is I feel like there's this extended period of feeling like you're walking on eggshells.
Right.
And that's, I think, where the inauthenticity, I have said for years, inauthenticity can burn you out more than anything else. And
Yeah.
I feel like the thing that's benefited me in recent experiences, and I haven't been on apps for a while, but like in recent experiences on the apps, I'm like, if you have a problem with the fact that I'm going to initiate meeting up sooner rather than later, I'm probably not the girl for you anyway.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
I
Yes.
want to talk on the phone with you. I want to meet up with you. I don't want to. And this is my big issue because we're all busy. We're
Yeah.
all busy. We've got a lot of shit on our plates, and I don't want to waste my time
Yes.
on an app. I
Yeah.
really don't. So if you're not willing to take things off app and do it relatively quickly after we match, I'm not the girl for you because
Yes.
you're wasting my time at that point
Yeah.
in time. Like, know
Yes.
what you want. And I think it
Yes.
goes both ways.
Yes, I agree completely. I agree completely. And I think that there's so many, the app can't take into account the inauthenticity of the human to
Mhm.
themselves, toward themselves. Like,
True.
if a man goes on to the app and selects the, I'm into the long-term relationship thing, or that's what I'm really looking for. But
Yeah.
in reality is just, engaging in superficial conversations with 100 girls at the same time. Like, you're not being honest with yourself, but
Yeah.
there's nothing I can do about that. So now I'm
That's
just
very true.
stuck in your cycle of,
Or, and I'll call myself on this, the period of time where I had on the app that I was undecided about having kids. I would put that on the app. And I did that perhaps manipulatively, I'll admit it. Because I had already had the realization that if I make it known that I don't want to have kids, I feel like I drastically limit my dating pool. So
yeah.
I would say that I was undecided. And I feel like that worked to my like that didn't work to my favor. Like I think it would have served me better to just be honest with myself and be like, nah, I don't see myself having kids. I really don't.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree. And I feel like that's another one of those, socially conditioned things where even in the virtual sphere, we're putting ourselves forward in a way that feels appropriate and, sensitive to other
We're
people's
yeah.
feelings. And I don't want to take a hard stance because I don't know you yet. And maybe, there is some wiggle room. I don't know. I want to explore this. There's just all of those.
So, maybe
Um,
we should take a hard stance, because I have, like,
yeah,
the people who they have like something political in their profile that is the complete opposite of what I think. I'm swiping left real fast,
yes,
but I feel like that saves us a lot of time. Like,
yes,
maybe we need to. I actually feel like the way in which dating apps could serve us better, and we are getting a little bit off topic, so we
I
might have to
know,
pull us
yeah,
in.
yeah, we're
But
gonna
I
pull it
do feel
back.
like the way that dating apps could serve us better is to have less cookie cutter questions. Like,
Ooh, I
maybe
love
we
it.
don't do two truths and a lie. Maybe
Yes,
we do, what is a hill that you would die on? Or something
yes,
like that. And I feel like people are going to spin that to be like some bullshit thing about like pineapple should not be on pizza or something like that. Like, which is a hill I probably would die on. But like, maybe with a dating apps need to like, they need to push us to like put stuff that's actually serious in our
yes.
profiles. Like, so that we can waste less time filtering through people who don't actually have the same values that we have and don't believe the same things we do. And I don't think we need to be like perfectly aligned in all of the things that we believe, but like, come on, we all know that there's like fundamental shit that you're
Yes.
going to disagree with. Like, I do think it's a step in the right direction with the whole like, how much do you drink? Do you want kids? Do you do
Mhm.
drugs? I'm sorry, I'm not dating a smoker. I'm not dealing with that crap.
Yep,
I'm just not.
yep.
But simultaneously, if I'm bullshitting about whether or not I want kids, like, yeah.
Right.
Anyways,
Yes.
I will admit that I've screwed up in that department. Imperfect hello. Here I am.
Yes, except for all human. Well, and
Yeah.
I love that line of thinking just in the intention of authenticity. And I'm going to get a
Mhm.
little woo woo here, so feel free to, take what you want and ignore the rest. But in that, from an energetic standpoint, if we are our most authentic selves and bravely shining that forth, regardless of the environment around,
Mhm.
the compatible people will not be uncomfortable to come into that space, come into that energetic space and share it with us,
Yeah.
or add to it even perhaps, which obviously would be the ideal. But if we're like kind of hiding and not really sure and sort of adjusting to be
Mhm.
the most compatible with the most number of people, of course there's going to be
Yeah.
this like massive list of overwhelming options, and maybe
You're
we have to stop
literally
being
making me think. Sorry, go ahead.
no, that was it.
I was just gonna say, you're literally making me think that like, it's like dating's almost like business in a sense. This might be a really, really weird comparison to make, but like when you try to be everything for everybody in business too, you're not going to have a successful business because you're not reaching the people that you were really meant to work with. And I think it's the same thing in dating. And I feel like and I get why we do it. I think so many of us are A, in scarcity mindset, and B, have had enough bad dating experiences at this point in time that we're just like, I'm going to cast a wide net. But I think
Yeah.
what that does is it puts us in situations where we're inauthentic, which is going to burn you out. And
Yep.
when you cast a wide net, you may be having 80 bajillion conversations each week or going on like 4 dates each week. And that is also where I think burnout gets in the way. I think
Oh,
and this is almost me talking to myself in a lot of ways of as I, because I am navigating getting back into dating slowly but surely. It's just, I think it's just not my priority right now, which is why I haven't really been pursuing it. But I think if I were to get back into dating, do it intentionally and do it in a way that's not going to burn me out, I think I would go in with very, very clear picture of like, if I'm going on a dating app, what's my intention going on this dating app? What am I hoping to get out of this? What's okay and what's not okay? And I think that intention is what hopefully can help us overcome the inauthenticity of being on a dating app.
yes.
The matching with somebody and meeting up with them and dating them for several dates purely out of validation. The
Yeah.
the convincing yourself that you like somebody that you don't actually like, the ignoring, like, this is all from what we like what you and I have talked about before, but we've not talked about on this podcast. There are multiple different types of burnout, and I feel like when you have clear intentions, when you are being authentic to yourself, when you know your values and you keep your values in mind when you're dating, and simultaneously when you actually pay attention to the like red flags. We use red flags a lot in dating, and I really feel like red flags, that's just your brain and your body raising a flag that, hey, this is a potential boundary violation here. This is
Yes.
something like, it's your body calling attention to the fact that there might be an issue with boundaries here. And
Yes.
when we ignore those, boundaries, when we ignore those red flags, that is something that creates emotional burnout. And so I feel like all of these things, we just need to pay more goddamn attention to the
Yeah.
red flags, because when we ignore the red flag, that's one of the big things that burns us out. So I think that's an aspect of dating and burnout that I think is, it's logical, but like there's the like burnout reason why you should pay attention to it. Burnout, emotional burnout arises from values conflicts, a lack of boundaries, a lack of authenticity, like all of those things that we're talking about, they create emotional burnout. Like
Exactly.
that's why we care about those in the context of dating. But like
Exactly.
if we also think about like the physical and the overwhelm side of things, you get physically burned out and you get overwhelmed when you're doing too much.
Uh-huh. Exactly. That whole idea of trying to cast that huge wide net. And yeah,
Yeah.
you caught 1,000 fish, but you only want three. Like that's not
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's not
You only want like a tenth of the people that you're actually like really connecting with. And when we do that, like it's burnout in dating, I feel like is impacts us the same way as burnout at work does.
yeah.
And when we are doing too much at work, what happens? The consequence of that is usually we stop taking care of ourselves, which means we don't feel as confident. And what
Uh-huh.
very well also might happen is it's going to start impacting our relationships. We're going to start snapping at people that we love. We're going to start showing up as a shitty version of ourselves. It's the same in dating too. And I feel like when we cast that wide net, when we try to, date 80 bajillion people at one time, that is ends up being what happening. We stop taking care of ourselves. So we stop feeling as confident physically in our
Yep.
bodies when we're out dating. And what might also happen is because we're trying to, keep tabs on all of these different relationships and juggle all of these different relationships, we might start snapping at the very people that are the people that we actually want.
Yeah,
And the
exactly.
only reason it's happening is because we are doing too much. We are burning ourselves out,
Exactly.
trying to meet as many fish in the sea as we can when those fish aren't the type of fish that we actually like anyway.
Yes, exactly. I agree completely. And
I
and I
only like salmon. Sorry.
yes, no, I love it. I
It's
love
my
it.
favorite kind of sushi right there.
Yes. Yes, 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 yes. I had one of my clients and I worked with the avocado metaphor. Like, you got to squeeze a lot of avocados, but you don't pick them all up and cut them open and like get way in there. You just
Yep.
got to feel out like, does this feel like it's the right one? Is this going to be the
I
right
like
thing?
the sexual innuendo of that. It's like
Yeah.
the little 12-year-old in me is like, hee.
That big old pit in the middle. Okay, okay, okay. Okay, okay, okay. I got to pull it back a little bit. But what?
So good though.
I
Squeeze
love
that avocado, my friend. Squeeze it.
yeah, get in there, guys. Well, and yes, like in the
Okay.
energetic, real world, extrapolating the metaphor to our real lives kind of
Yeah.
situation there would be drawing that hard line and being like, nope, this one is not right for me. And
Hmm.
being able to say that bravely, even when it's the only person talking to you on the app or whatever, in any
Yeah.
context because I think that drawing those boundaries sometimes we are actually, from an energetic standpoint anyway, opening
Mhm.
up other
Yes.
options or opportunities for ourselves by saying no to the things that aren't really a good fit. And I think that
Yeah.
sometimes insecurity and loneliness and whatever it is pushes us to, kind of tease along these interactions that on a deeper level we know aren't really the right ones, that aren't really going to serve us in a real way. But we're
Yeah.
afraid to like cut that out because
Because yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I was just thinking about that. Like I think we all have an understanding of why we do this. Like there's a scarcity there. There's not wanting to start again there. There's also, I feel like, a social pressure of like don't give up too quickly. Like don't be too picky.
yeah.
Like if I were to do a dating podcast, I've already picked the name. It's going to be called You're Too Picky, because I feel like that's what every single person, especially once you're like into your 30s, that's what every single person gets told is you're too picky. It's like, no, I'm not too picky. I just know that I have standards, and I know like you guys heard a lot about my past relationships the last time I was on the podcast.
Yeah,
Um
yeah.
if I reflect back on those now through the lens of thinking about burnout, which it's hilarious to me that up until this point in my life, I have never thought about burnout in my dating life and how it's affected my dating life. If I think back to, other than perhaps the not doing too much, that's probably the one place where I have thought about burnout is I didn't want to date too many people over a short period of time, or I didn't want to, I didn't want to do back to back nights of going on dates or something like that. That just felt like too much for me personally. But I actually think the emotional side of burnout is the one that I don't think I took into consideration. Like, I think if we think back to the guy who I dated, probably the most, like, the biggest relationship in my life was the guy that I dated a couple years ago, who told me he loved me one week and then broke up with me next. That guy. But with that guy, I literally started to, I say all the time, the first 6 months of our relationship was like exactly what I want in a relationship. The last 2 months were absolute shit. But I think I ignored a lot of things that I wanted in that relationship.
Yeah.
I like to be challenged. I need somebody to challenge me because I am a stubborn Taurus and I don't always make the best decisions for myself, and I'm stubborn. I know that about myself. I'm also my father's daughter, and I know I'm a little short fused and I have a little bit of a temper. That is stuff that
Yeah.
I'm aware of and that I'm working on. But simultaneously, I know what I need in a relationship. I need somebody who's going to put their time where their words are. I need to, which is funny because I'm more of a words of affirmation person, but if your words of affirmation don't match up with how you're spending your time and like your actions, that doesn't
Yeah.
jive for me. That doesn't
Yeah.
jive for me at all. And I think as soon as I started realizing about this person, I ignored it. I ignored that red flag. I ignored the fact that I'd asked him repeatedly, "Hey, I need you to challenge me. Hey, I need you to actually like do the things that you're going to say you're going to do. Hey, like your form of," and I think this is this is my pet peeve about love languages. I feel like people use, well, that's just my love language, as a cop out for not showing people love in the way that they receive love. I receive love through words of affirmation and physical touch. Those are my two primary love languages.
Yep.
And if I'm dating somebody who's an acts of service person, which is what he was, I don't give a shit if that's your love language. Sometimes we need to adapt our love languages to how that person receives love.
Right.
I tried to, like, one of the things that like I tried to, and I'm bad at acts of service. Acts of service is not one that I'm very good at because that's just not naturally how I think. That's actually a very low on my totem pole love language for me.
Yeah.
But that was his primary love language. And even though I told him, I was like, that's not how I receive love, all he could think of was that's how I want to give you love. And I'm just like, well, tough cookies. That's not how I receive love. Like, and I think that's my pet peeve about love languages. I feel like sometimes we use them as a cop out for not giving people the way they want to receive love. We only think about how we are used to giving love. And
Yeah.
that was a red flag for me too, is I would ask him to do these things. I make it very, very clear. This is what I need from you. Like, this is what I want. This is how I receive love. And he just wouldn't do it. He was very stuck in his own ways. And I ignored that for a period of time. And that led to inauthenticity.
Yes.
And it led to me being a bad version of myself with him in the last 2 months. That's where I will fully cop to the fact that I do think there was some self-sabotage and me driving him away. But at the same time, I was frustrated because I was asking and asking and asking, and I wasn't getting anything in return. In fact, I feel like he was just getting more and more frustrated with me because I had needs that he wasn't meeting. And I feel like it gave him PTSD about his ex. But like, those are the things that I think we don't pay attention to because we don't want to start over in dating.
Yes.
We wonder if this is the best that we're ever going to get. We wonder if we're worth what we want. And so we just accept the breadcrumbs. We accept the crumbs from the relationship that we're in, even though all of the shit is happening. And, I wonder, this is what led me down this tangent. I wonder if Ellyn had been, you can say, empowered, aware, if I had just embraced the fact of, this is a non-negotiable for me and there's nothing wrong with this being a non-negotiable for me,
Yeah.
I think I could have left that relationship on my terms instead of on his terms. And I think I would have been in a vastly better dating and relationships place. But instead, the relationship ended with somebody telling me they loved me and then taking that away a week later. Like, I'm sorry, if you are wondering about whether or not you love somebody, don't experiment with it by telling them.
Right. Pro tip.
Seems kind of obvious, but pro tip here, you don't want to experiment with whether you love somebody by telling them and then just seeing how it feels to say it to them. That's not a good way to experiment. But like I think I could have left that relationship on my terms, and I think I'd be in a better place right now in
Yeah.
terms of dating. But instead, I felt betrayed. I'm dealing with trust issues. And I think that's what happens sometimes when we ignore the emotional sides of things. Simultaneously, the guy I dated 8 months after him, I'm fully aware I dated him out of loneliness and the need for validation. But if I had paid attention to, it's probably not normal to tell somebody that you love them after 2 weeks. Or if I had, not given him the benefit of the doubt, frankly, when he was almost instantaneously after a month pouring his insecurities on me instead of dealing with him on his own.
Ooh,
There were so many things that were red flags that felt like boundary violations for me that I ignored because
yes.
I was just like, but it feels so nice to have somebody.
Yes.
And I think simultaneously, we have to, yes, be aware. Awareness is the first step with everything. We've got to be aware. We've got to pay some damn attention to the red flags that we are experiencing. And simultaneously, we need to give ourselves compassion for the imperfections. I can look back on Ellen from a couple years ago and have so much compassion for why she acted the way she did. She
Yeah.
was scared. She wanted safety. And frankly, she wanted connection that at the time I didn't feel capable of giving myself.
Yes.
So I made the decisions that I made, and I can have tremendous grace and compassion for that. I don't think shame works.
Oh, yeah, I 100% agree. And I love the honoring of the reality that I think anytime when we're in relationship and we naturally, of course, are going to the other person, like you mentioned, the need for
Mm-hmm.
security, for instance. Let's pick that
Mm-hmm.
one for right now. If that's the driving desire, the driving desire, that's a lot of pressure to put on somebody.
That
If
is a
we
lot
can't
of pressure to put on somebody.
if we can't give ourselves the things that we want first and then let our partners, add to that, like
Mm-hmm.
supplement that in some way, let it be kind of icing on the cake or whatever. They're
Mm-hmm.
always throwing energy into a huge hole because they're never going to
Yeah.
be able to do it in the way that we need them to, the way
Yeah.
that we need to do it, be able to do it for ourselves. And I think that it's this like weird, ironic thing that of course we need our partners to provide us safety. I mean,
Yeah.
that we need to be able to have safe relationships. Also, nothing
Yeah.
is ever 100% safe all the time, except the versions of ourselves that we can hold within, the realities of our lives, our love, our emotional well-being that we can
Mm-hmm.
hold sacred for ourselves within ourselves. And I think
Yeah.
that that's another place where we unknowingly put this expectation on a person and we're like,
Yeah.
I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe. And they can't fill that up. They can't make that, complete in the way that we want them to. And so then we either decide that we're wrong or that they're wrong. And those things might be true
Yeah.
too. It's the right relationship.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes we're asking too much.
I agree. It's actually making me think of I always say with burnout that we need to have multiple sources of fulfillment. Like I
Ooh,
caution
yes.
people against, yeah, I always caution people against, putting all the eggs in one basket from the profession. Like, yeah, that's your livelihood and then it's your passion and it's your sole source of fulfillment. That's dangerous. And I always caution
Yeah.
people against doing that because and honestly, even for like you're like a stay-at-home mom, like putting all the eggs in like your children, like it's not to get
Yes.
morbid here, but your children can get taken away from you. Like maybe you
Yes.
guys have a falling out, or God forbid there's some sort of like a death or some sort of a tragedy that happens. But even then, if you are going through a period of time, which happens as children get older, where you are not receiving the love from your children in the same way that
Yes.
that you used to when they were younger, that's going to feel like your source of fulfillment and security and safety gets taken away, like your identity gets taken away. And I think I'm realizing I'd never applied this to dating before. This is a fun conversation because there's stuff that I feel like I talk about a lot with burnout because that I've never applied to dating before, but I think it counts. In the same
Yes.
way, we can't have our relationship be our sole source of anything. It can't be our sole source of
Exactly.
security. It can't be our sole source of love. It can't be our sole source of anything. It can't be
Nurturing.
like, I think anytime you do that, it's almost like, and I almost use the phrase, it's almost giving them too much power. And I do think
Yes.
that's true, but I don't think that's why we shouldn't do it. I
Yes.
think it
Well,
is important I don't think it's a problem for somebody to serve a purpose in our lives, but that's a lot of pressure to put on one person. I've been on the receiving end of that too. The guy I actually dated before my most serious relationship, actually, the night I met that guy. I also got asked out by another guy. Two people asked for my numbers and asked me out that night. I was wearing a very, very short Halloween costume, and I think it served me well. I don't fit into it anymore. My butt's too big. Um, but I got asked out twice that night. And one of them went from, it was actually funny. The guy I ended up dating, we almost were more like friends at first. I knew he was interested in me, but the way in which we spent time together was more like friends. We went to the same alma mater, so we went and watched football games together the first few times we hung out. And I almost like that because it feels very low pressure. This
Yeah.
other guy went from 0 to 100 in like 0.2 seconds. Like it
Mhm.
was in no time at all. He was saying stuff to me like, you're my dream girl. Like you are like, he would say, you were like exactly what I've been looking for. I could tell within the span of 24 hours of texting this man that I was on a pedestal. And I ultimately
Yeah.
shut it down and
Good for
ceased
you.
contact with him because, and I told him, I was just like, you're putting me on a pedestal already. We haven't even gone on a date yet. Like, this is intimidating as hell because I feel like, and this is where I came from. So I'm sure if other people have experienced this is probably how they felt too. It feels like I'm setting them up for disappointment. Like, that's a lot to live up to. Like, I
Yes.
feel like I am going to disappoint you from the jump.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
like, no, I'm scared because of the opinion you already have of me that I'm not going to live up to. And I
Yeah.
actually think it probably would have been the same with the guy I dated after my ex, the guy who told me he loved me after 2 weeks. I feel like I would have reacted the same way to him if I wasn't heartbroken from the 6 months before.
Yeah.
Like, and it's the interesting side of being on the other side of heartbreak. Like when we own what we're feeling and we don't dismiss it and we appreciate it, I feel like when relationships end, they can end in a better way.
Yeah.
Like
I
they
agree.
can end in a more empowering way that leaves us feeling like we are the driver of our romantic life instead of in
Yes.
the passenger seat.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. And I want to add too that I think for me, and I know that it's a little bit different for everybody, of course, but
Mm,
my power in
mm,
relationships came from my love of myself, my empowerment in
mhm.
myself. And the reason is because I can be so wildly insecure, so
Mhm.
wildly insecure.
Same.
And so when I would feel insecure, before, there was just this huge, heavy, like acrid, toxic feeling energy that would come over me about paranoia that he would leave, that he was going to meet somebody better than me, that, whatever
Mhm.
ridiculous narrative I came up with. And I didn't even enjoy the relationship that was actually very good in hindsight because I was so freaking worried about it ending all the time because I was imperfect in some way or whatever it was. And now I've had
Mhm.
enough, battle wounds and been drugged through the hot coals often enough that
Mhm.
I so love who I am, but also my life alone, that if the wonderful person that's in my life right now were to leave, I think we mentioned this, I would be sad, but
Mhm.
I would happily go back to my single life. And I
Yeah.
think that that allows him to also be able to show up as a flawed person, knowing that I
Mhm.
am just enjoying having him in my life. He doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not perfect either. But also,
Yeah.
I could walk away from this at any time, and so could he. And I don't have to be worried
Yeah.
about him walking away. But he also then is, I think, more forthcoming with his desire to be in my life and show that to me
Yeah.
because he knows that I'm not like, oh, please don't go. Please like me. Please,
Yeah.
whatever the shit that we do to ourselves is, that
Yeah. Yeah,
can
no, I'm with you, and I'm
disappoint.
really glad you brought it back to the notion of perfection because I was thinking as we were talking about this, I don't think either of us are saying that the other person needs to be perfect. Like
Oh, of
there were,
course.
I think it's about, I do think there's a pick your battles element of this, but I do feel like we have to know ourselves and we have to know what is truly a non-negotiable in our
Yes.
relationship. And I actually feel like, and when we sacrifice the things that are non-negotiables because of fear or scarcity or whatever it might be, that is when burnout starts to set in our relationships.
Yes.
I do. And actually, you know what? Oh, I know we're talking about dating and relationships, but burnout can happen in any relationship. We can get in periods where there's family members that we can't be around because they're burning us out, or there's friendships
Yeah.
that we can be around that or we can't be around because they're burning us out. And I do feel like it comes from the same place. I think relationships burn us out I think this is a blanket statement that's perhaps a very accurate blanket statement. Anytime a relationship or the pursuit of a relationship is coming from a place of desperation, I feel like that
Yes.
is when
Yeah.
it can burn us out. When we feel like we have to date 80 bajillion people out of some sense of desperation to find that perfect fish in the sea for us, that can create
Right.
burnout, that can create inauthenticity. When we feel the
Yes.
need to constantly like, oh, I need to be in constant communication with this one person in my life because if I don't, they'll leave. That's coming from a place of desperation. When our relationships
Exactly.
come from a place of desperation to the point where we are, that it's just not, that's going to create burnout, and it shows up in a lot of different ways. You even, and I, somebody might even think of this, what's the difference between, relationship burnout and like codependency? I'm not an
Yeah.
expert on codependency, but
Yeah.
I do feel like there's probably overlap in
Yeah.
that sense. And I think what I want people to take from this is to focus on the red flags, for example. Focus on the red flags. Focus on somebody's response like to you communicating those red flags, because I feel like a red
Mhm.
flag for a red flag is the fact that they are not willing to acknowledge it, and they're
Right.
ignoring it. um uh so it's like focus on that. And really, I feel like one part of this that we haven't talked about with dating and burnout that I really feel like is important, we have to know our own limits. And when I say that, yes, I'm
Yes.
talking about boundaries, but what I also mean is we have to know our own limits in terms of what our personal needs are outside of our relationship. This is, I'm going
Yes.
to use my past relationship as an example. I feel like the biggest thing he and I did wrong is we became all about each other from the get-go.
Yeah.
He had, I think I mentioned to you last time, he had 3 kids.
Yep.
And I really liked his kids. I think he introduced me to his kids too early. But I really liked his kids. I thought they were great, and I thought we got along. But when he wasn't with his kids, he was with me. He was basically living with me when he wasn't with his kids. I think we became all about each other way, way, way too quickly. And I feel like then when we tried to then build lives outside of each other later,
Yeah.
I think we both kind of felt like, me in particular, I kind of panicked.
Yeah.
And I feel like what we needed to realize is we needed to build lives outside of each other. Honestly,
Yeah.
and I'm still like this. This doesn't seem like enough for some people. I really only need like 1 day a week with my significant other. Let's
Mhm.
have like one damn good date night where we're both really, really present. Like if you're on your phone working the whole fucking time, that doesn't count, which is what he did.
Right?
But like if we give me 1 night a week, that's really, I feel like I want to be in communication throughout the rest of the week. Like who doesn't want to know that they're being thought of?
Right.
But like
Yeah.
I that's my bare minimum that I need is
Yeah.
1 day a week. And like, yeah, cool. If you're on vacation 1 week, I'm not gonna like break up with you. Whatever. Like I'm like, I just need 1 day a week. And I think what
Yes.
he didn't realize, and this is where it comes back to knowing yourself, I'm an introvert, and what we realized when we broke up is when he was with his kids, I got plenty of recharge time. I got plenty of time to do my own thing. But he didn't get that. And he
Yeah.
was extroverted to the point where I don't think he recognized his needs outside of
The
being an
relationship.
extrovert. And I don't think he recognized that he needed time for himself as well. I think he realized that he did need alone time. And he didn't feel
Yeah.
like he could ask for it, which I would have been no problem with that. But I think he
Yeah.
waited too long to realize that, and I think he waited too long to ask for it. We made too much of our lives about each other too quickly,
Yeah.
and we didn't recognize our own needs outside of the relationship. And I think that is an important thing to ask as well. And it's an important thing to ask even in the dating process. If you know you're an introvert and you know it's going to take a lot of mental, emotional, physical energy for you to juggle more than X amount of relationships at a time, then don't juggle more than X amount of relationships at a time. If
Right.
you're an
Yeah.
extrovert, cool, do the opposite. But also know if you're an extrovert that you very well might be dating introverts and they need their space. Like if you want to get an introvert on their best day, you need to respect that like they're going to need some recharge time. We all date
Yes.
very differently, and some people can, like that gal who went on like 60 some dates, some people can go from a coffee date into a dinner date into a drink date. Like some people can
Yeah.
do that. I am not that human. That is not how I operate when it comes to dating. That sounds fucking exhausting for me. So, but I know
Yes.
that about myself. And you have to
Yes.
know that about yourself, of how you date. What are your red flags? What do you fundamentally at a bare minimum need in your relationship? Like, your relationship probably should never give you the bare minimum, but we need to know fundamentally what we need. And I
What
think when we
is.
don't, that's when we show up inauthentically. That's when we show up in a way that's going to burn us out. That's when we show up and start creating relationships that just don't serve us and that are going to
Mhm.
ultimately be a source of burnout in our lives instead of a source of fulfillment and self-care in our lives, is
Yes.
when we ignore our own needs and we don't take the space to slow down and figure out what those needs are.
Absolutely, I agree completely. I think most often when I look back on relationships, there were points where I would have, I was starting to feel like this might not be. I'm not okay. I'm
Mm-hmm.
starting to feel like I'm not
Yeah.
okay. And for, in the beginning, I kind of just said, I'm not okay. And this is the problem that I'm having. And how do we work on it together or whatever? And then I would kind of wait for there to be adjustments made, or I would try to make my own adjustments. But
Mm-hmm.
that became a slippery slope real quickly because I don't think I checked in often enough and really honored, like, there are other men and this is not working. I'm not okay. I need to be done and let it go. Because there, whatever scarcity mentality you want to pull about that, but also just this, like, I don't want it to fail. I don't want to have to start, all the stuff that you mentioned. And
Mm-hmm.
I should be able to give myself enough of everything to not need this from the other person. And that's
Yeah.
true as a baseline. I can get up
Yeah.
to my base, but if I'm only getting my baseline, then I would rather be alone. Like, you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
If what
Oh,
I can give
100%.
myself is the max that I'm going to get out of this, then what am I doing here? Like,
Yeah.
we need to
Like,
be,
you have to, that's a really, I think, a really, really important observation for people to make too. I feel like the gist of this when it comes to dating and burnout is really, we have to be honest with ourselves. Like, and I think
yes,
that's the biggest reason why people burn themselves out in relationships. They're not being honest about what their capacity is when they're in the initial dating phases, and they're not being honest with themselves about their needs in the actual relationship phase. And they're not being honest about, like, is this actually worth the time and energy I'm putting into it? Like,
yes,
I always say, like, I haven't, the reason I'm single is I haven't met anybody that's worth it. That is true to a point. I do think there's relationships in my past that I sabotage. That's my bad. But like, the relationships that I've been in, if it's not giving me more than I can give myself, if it's just work and it's
yes.
not giving me anything for that work, what am I doing here? Why am I in
Exactly.
this relationship? That's what the guy I dated after was. He was just work. And even
Yep.
when, and I don't think there's anything wrong with, there was a boundary. I literally said, we're not dating again until you go back to therapy. There was a boundary. But, you go back to when you go back to therapy and you're not actually putting in the work, you're thinking you're just going to heal by osmosis. And then
Yeah.
you do the exact same shit a month later.
Yeah.
Like, I do feel like I feel like people can't be afraid to put up boundaries. What I'm saying is, people can't be afraid to put up boundaries because the relationship will end. Because if you
Yes.
put up a boundary, you're giving somebody an opportunity to meet what you need. And we
Yes.
do with boundaries. I will say, with boundaries, we sometimes boundaries have to be negotiable. You really have to
Right.
ask yourself if there's hard boundaries versus soft boundaries. If something's a hard boundary, it's non negotiable. If something's a soft boundary, it's negotiable. And it is very personal what the hard versus soft boundaries are, what boundaries are
Right.
actually negotiable. But if you have set a boundary, and in this situation, this was a boundary, like, I'm sorry, you are not putting your insecurities on me. I have enough of my own shit to deal with. I am not carrying your insecurities as well. You are an adult human. That is your burden to bear.
Yes.
Figure your shit out. Like, that was a
Yes.
hard boundary for me. I am not, like, I will be supportive, but I will not be in that situation. That was a good example of somebody making it all, like, making that entire insecurity around, I was going to fix that for them. Like, no,
Yeah.
I'm not going to fix that. I'm going to be a pillar to support that. But I
Yeah.
cannot be the sole support system for that insecurity. That is too much to put on me. And I had a hard boundary around that. Like, no,
Yes. Good for
I,
you.
if it's something, if literally anytime you feel, I know this is a podcast, but if you feel like you are on the receiving end of something that is literally making you want to put your hands up and be like, stop, That's a boundary violation. That's a good red flag, but that's a
Uh,
boundary violation. It's like your hands
yes.
are up, stop, you've crossed a line, boundary violation. That is literally what we do when somebody is crossing our boundaries. And in that
Yes.
situation, I was just like, stay back. I don't want
Yeah.
that in my life. And I'm what I'm saying here is though, is we can set that boundary and we're giving somebody the opportunity to change. I think breaks are actually, I'm realizing more and more, I think breaks are good. Breaks
Yeah.
breaks can be very productive in a relationship when something isn't working. But something has to come out of that break. We have to both parties perhaps have to change during that break. You can't just assume that the pause button was enough to fix the issues in the relationships. And I think
Yeah.
that's why certain people break up and get back together and break up and get back together. I'm not a relationship by any expert, but what by any extent, but what I do know is what I do and do not want. And when somebody is continually giving me what I don't want, I am very good at being like peace. Like
Yes.
I do not I have a low tolerance for bullshit.
Yes.
And that feels like bullshit to me when I'm in a relationship and I have asked something and I put up a hard boundary and I've laid out the expectations and the consequences and they don't meet them.
Yes.
And I
Exactly.
think that
Exactly.
is the point. Like communicate your needs, give somebody the opportunity to adapt and adjust and give them credit for the progress that they are making.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We're not expecting perfection here, but you are going to be so better off if you realize this isn't working. We are on a hamster wheel and it's
Yeah.
not going anywhere. Then just move on. You're going to save yourself so much time, so much sanity, so much physical, mental, and emotional energy. Just move on. I wish I'd done that in some of my relationships.
Yes. Yes. Oh my God. I stayed in some relationships years longer than I
Hmm.
should have because
Yeah.
it wasn't really working, but I didn't want to let it go. And I think
Yeah.
too, the other thing that in those contexts I was missing or not honoring was that ultimately then again on the kind of energetic level or spiritual one, I
Hmm.
was saying that holding on to this non-functional relationship was more important than my joy and peace.
Yeah.
And that is effing bullshit. And being able to
And it's going to burn you
acknowledge,
out.
yes, exactly. And being able to acknowledge, like, I am worth a better relationship, not a better man, because there are no
Hmm.
perfect men or partner, whatever. It doesn't have to be, like you said, we're not asking for perfection, but we're asking to be able to work toward the same things in a compatible way. And I
Hmm.
think that when that starts to break down, being self assured, self confident, self loving enough to say, like, I love you, I loved you, but
Hmm.
we're not helping each other anymore. We're making each other worse or
Yeah.
stagnating. I deserve better, and so do you. And
Yeah.
going out into the world, braving that loneliness or whatever it's going to be again, knowing that there really is better, whether it comes in the
Yep.
context of the romantic relationship or in some other way in life.
Yeah. 100%. I'm like snapping over
Yes,
here. Yeah,
yes,
it's making me think of, the I feel like the perfection piece of things. Perfection I feel like is intimidating on both sides.
oh
Like if
yeah,
you're being held to a nobody wants you to be perfect
no,
because dating somebody who's perfect is going to make the other person insecure as
yeah,
fuck, firstly.
yes,
And being held to a standard of perfection makes you feel like that you're walking on eggshells and you can't be
authentic,
authentic.
human,
Like, I feel like that is what so many of us are afraid of when we date
yes,
is we want them to think so highly of us, but they sure as shit don't want us to be perfect. I think I'm
yeah,
realizing that getting older is a gift, people, because man,
right,
Ellen in her 20s would never have said shit like this. But like I think I'm realizing more and more that like they don't want me to be perfect because I have had somebody try like have this perfect vision of me, like I said before, and it was intimidating. And I feel like I
yeah,
felt like I was being set up for failure.
yeah. And
Like it
I
felt like a no-win
one of my
scenario.
most successful relationships came out of the introduction that I had with the guy, and he led off with his biggest flaws. He was like
Yeah.
seriously within the first few hours or whatever, like, and it was sort of in a joking way, but he was also very serious about like, I know what my limitations are. I know
Yeah.
where I'm a jackass. I know where I'm a fuck up. And I found that actually incredibly attractive and really
Mhm.
liberating because then I could be flawed in front of him. And I think that
Mhm.
that's really useful too. Perhaps we could start dating in a way where we're just like, you know, Look at
Here
the
it is.
yes. Let me show you my fat rolls and
Let me
cellulite and deep scars and, like, maybe not the emotional stuff just yet because that's kinda heavy, but you get
It's
all the
literally
worst.
making me think, what if I ran a dating experiment where I went on dating apps? I don't think I would be able to do the extreme version of this, but like, what if I on dating apps, I think the extreme version of this would be like, instead of posting your best pictures, you post your worst pictures, and you put all of the shit that you don't want people to know about you. Like answers to the questions, like, or all of the stuff that, like, even like something that I am the most proud of, I think I mentioned last time, is something that I feel like often intimidates people when I'm on dating apps. But like, what if I led with all of that stuff? Like, what if I led with the stuff that I'm afraid that they're going to be intimidated by, the stuff that I'm afraid they're going to know about me? What if I posted the pictures where I actually do look fat instead of the ones where I do look skinny or I think I look fat? We have a fucked up perceptions
Right,
of ourselves.
self-criticism,
But like,
yeah.
that would be I don't know if I could do the extreme version of it. I think I could do the version where I still put cute pictures up because I'm vain and I'm very insecure about those kinds of stuff. I'll admit it. But like, what if I
Like,
put the cute pictures up and then in all the answers to the questions, like, here's the shit I don't want you to know about me: that I am stubborn, that I have a temper, that I do perhaps invest way too much of my identity and my self-worth in my business and how my business is going, that I'm very, very insecure about my financial situations. Like, what if I led with all of that?
I love this so much because I mean, holy avoiding burnout. Like you would get that filter down to like the
Mm-hmm.
core group of,
Yeah.
however
Like, fucking
many
take it or leave
hundred.
it.
Yes, and if they're still
Yeah.
there, like those are people worth investing in because those are people that are willing to, love the dark parts
Mm-hmm.
of us. Like not even
Yeah.
just accept, but perhaps find those to be more endearing. To find
Mm-hmm.
us to be more endearing because that's who we are. Oh, I
Mm-hmm.
love that. If I were single, I would do it in a heartbeat. If you decide to do it, I want to track the whole story and, do regular
Maybe I
check-ins and all that
should.
kind of stuff for sure.
Maybe I should. I'm not
Dude,
on a dating app right now.
no pressure, but I would support you 100%. Oh my God, it would be
It would
so
be a fun
fascinating.
experiment. It would be a very fun experiment. TBD. TBD. I'll let you
Yes,
guys know.
yes, yes, yes. Oh my God.
Also, this is
Dude,
completely unrelated to our conversation, and we could totally wrap up after this. But are you a Bridgerton watcher?
I'm not, but it comes up on my suggestions all the time. Should I be? Tell me. Sell me one way or the other.
Okay, well, the only reason I thoroughly enjoy Bridgerton, though they're making some changes that I'm not sure I'm on board with, but one thing I love is the lead this season. So, like, the whole idea behind Bridgerton is, and since we talked about this last time, this is completely unrelated to dating and burnout, but it is related to dating. Um, each season has a new couple. It's like this family, they have like 80 bajillion siblings, and each season is a new sibling basically finding their person. And this
Wow.
season was kind of the friends to lovers thing that had
Oh,
been brewing for multiple seasons. Like, one of the brothers of this family was very good friends with his sister's best friend who lived across the street. But she's kind of the wallflower. She's kind of she's heavier than the rest of them. She is not your typical leading woman. And this season was their season to fall in love. And I've read the book, and the book's very cute, and I think they did a good job adapting it to the season. But one thing I loved is she is not your typical leading woman. And when they
yeah.
had their sex scene, like, her tummy's all out there and you can see the rolls. And I have to say, I loved watching that, because that is the first time, I feel like we see a lot about, like, there's not enough representation of, like, people of color on the screen.
Yeah.
And that's actually something that Bridgerton's very good at. Bridgerton takes place in the Regency era, but they basically just said, fuck all of the Regency rules. We're going to have Black people who
Yes.
are dukes. We're going to have
Yes.
Indian people who are like viscounts. Like, we're going to do all the things. And that's what I love about it, is I don't think I've ever seen a sex scene on a screen with somebody who actually has a tummy like I do. And it was so
Yes.
fun to see, because
Yes.
yeah, in the same way that everybody else thinks, I actually just saw myself on the
Yes.
screen, and that's so
Yes.
empowering.
Yes. 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 It comes back to that idea of that energy that you could get. I think you talked about having done boudoir, a photo
Yes.
shoot or something
Yeah, the
like
last
that.
one.
Yes, and my friend is a photographer that does that. I mentioned that. And it
Mhm.
has that same sense of empowerment. Like we have been sold the idea that sexy only happens, if you could embody a mannequin in some way and have that be
Yeah.
sexy at all, which of course it's not and never was.
I have a
But
nicer butt. Thank you very
right?
much.
exactly. If you want a woman that is made of plastic, like, go ahead, not her. It's not
Yeah.
gonna happen, you know? But I think that the reality of the true intimacy and love
Mhm.
making that happens in the most beautiful relationships is that,
Mhm.
like, burst open, show
Mhm.
all of the shit, you know. I think well, yeah, we talked about on your podcast,
Mhm.
my whole bottom half of my body is just jacked. It's just
Mhm.
so misformed. And I was so convinced that that was going to be a barrier to men having any interest in me in any way. And it has absolutely not been. In fact, it's a bonding point, I think, because they see me having to be vulnerable in that way. And I think that that's something that connects people in a deeper way than a pretty body ever would, you know?
Yeah.
That's the
I think
heart stuff.
people like it's like that perfection thing that we're talking about. People like to know that you have vulnerabilities because they have vulnerabilities.
Yes. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. I'm weak and soft and broken in certain ways as well, you
Hmm.
know? We all have our
Hmm.
soft, creamy
Hmm.
inside.
I like a donut. Sorry. Um,
You know,
my brain immediately goes to like a donut.
mine too. Mine too. The foot long,
Am I
baby.
hungry? Do I want a donut? Maybe. Um,
Yes, yes, yes.
no, I just like, yeah, this total, but I've seen that on screen too, where somebody, I haven't seen it from the woman's side, but I have seen it from like I'm a movie buff. I can always reference a movie, but there's a Netflix movie where a guy went to war, got into a situation where it basically mangled his leg. And
Yeah.
they have a cute little scene later where she's undressing him and she sees the leg for the first time and it's
Yes.
cute.
When I met, little sidebar here before we wrap up, when I met the wild man, I'm gonna call him the last
I
longer.
need like cute nicknames for all of my like relationships and exes. We're gonna work on that. If I do a dating podcast happening,
Yes, 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 yes. The current one, I call him the pleasure prince when I write about him. Anyway, the wild man.
that's a
I
good nickname. I'm just saying. Does he know
yeah,
that's what you call him?
yes, he does, and he's okay with it.
Ugh.
Also, he's
I mean,
Colombian.
I'd be a fan of that if I was a man. Shit.
Well, it's even more about his like ability to absorb the delight in normal life situations.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I'm running around doing shit and he's standing on the balcony like, "Come here, the sun is setting, it's gorgeous. Stop for a second, feel the pleasure
Why
of
do I feel
this."
like
You know?
Latin men are way better at that? I mean, I want to go to my friend spends a lot of time in Costa Rica and I know their whole like mantra in Costa Rica is pura vida.
Yes. Yes, 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 yes.
Maybe
Yeah.
Latin men are good for more than just dancing. Maybe Jose the Beach Vendor was wrong.
Yes, I think so. I think so. Because the wild man was not the great partner by any means.
Yeah.
But when I met him the first time and he saw my leg, I warned him about it because I had been told I should. And he kissed all of the scarring,
Oh,
all I know. And I was just so like, oh my, which is probably part of the reason I fell too hard for him and took the relationship too far. But but the
I
point
mean,
is,
oh,
our imperfections, bodily speaking, are
hmm,
not imperfections. They're just the way
yeah,
our bodies are. And when we can, you know, that whole idea of authenticity and drawing a hard boundary, like if you cannot fucking love the body that I'm in, you can fuck off.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
this is a
That
sanctuary.
tells me a lot more about you than it says about me, probably in a situation
Yes.
like that.
Yep. Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Need
Okay.
to adopt.
We yes.
Adopting. I'm internalizing that mentality right now.
Yes, yes, assimilating, metabolizing, yes.
Yes.
So, okay, on the quick little summation, authenticity, friends,
Yes.
authenticity, drawing lines, holding boundaries.
Authenticity, know yourself, pay attention to
Yes,
those red flags, pay attention to those boundary violations, and also keep in mind the situations where it's a hard boundary versus it's a soft boundary. If it's a hard boundary, do not fucking negotiate. But also
exactly.
realize that there are going to be situations where your boundaries might need to be negotiable. And that's
Yeah,
okay. That's not you. That's not you being inauthentic. That's you
no,
creating a relationship.
exactly, exactly. And perhaps opening up a growth edge, a place where you can say,
Yeah.
okay, this isn't that important to me. How can I grow to be more accepting of this version of the thing that I thought I
Mhm.
was totally not okay with or whatever? Or I
Exactly.
don't like that. phrasing, but anyway, I loved this. I always love talking to you. Thank you so much for spending your time with me,
Absolutely.
sharing your stories, and
Why do I
yeah,
feel like this isn't going to be the last time either? I don't know. I
I
feel like
hope
I'll be
not.
back, guys. I'm going to run my
Definitely.
dating app experiment and I'll report back.
I so want that to happen. No pressure on you, but somebody out there, please do this. I'm
Yeah.
so curious about how that. I want to write a book about it, or do a movie or something. It would be
It would be
fantastic.
funny. That actually could be a great movie. Oh.
Yes, yes, yes. Oh, my dear friend, thank you again. I so appreciate you. We'll speak again soon.
Yes, we
Ciao.
will. Absolutely. Bye.